Begin with, we have this concept of the people from other planets as little green men. Are they green from what you know? Are they all the same?
Unfortunately, they're not so benevolent.
A fucking alien.
What's good? Welcome Area 51 here with your host Jimmy. Another day in the jungle. Give us a like, subscribe, and also become part of our community in goldenboxing.com for more news and stories. All right, let's get this rolling. And let's talk about this topic. Okay, so we all saw the fight between John Ryder and Canelo Alvarez. John Ryder, was not an elite fighter, and Canelo Alvarez could not finish this man, and he looked very vulnerable in this fight. There was a lot of flaws in his game, and this was against John Ryder. Now, John Ryder had a good strategy, but had it been a fighter who has more power or better skill set and who can move better, Canelo would have been toast in the fight. And this is constructive criticism. I've been very against Canelo for a long time. And he needs to do something different in his career at this point in time, because there's a lot of people who just don't believe in him anymore. And that's going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. Since 2015, I criticized this fighter because I thought there was a lot of controversial moves, certain fighters that he was taking. It was just not good. Like Sugar Shane Mosley was out of his prime. I mean, I give him credit for Austin Trout. That was a good fight. But Erislandy Lara, he should have had a rematch against him. Well deserved. He gave one to Golovkin, but couldn't give one to Erislandy Lara. That was weird. Also, he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., but he thought that, or his team thought that Floyd Mayweather Jr. was, out of his prime. So that's why they probably picked him and totally lost that fight. So he learned from that fight, and I think he became very emotional and decided to avoid black fighters for the most part. Okay. Now, rehydration clauses, the fact that he was caught cheating with clenbuterol. Now you can say, well, in Mexico, they listen, bro, if you get caught, you get caught. There's no excuse for that. And you can hide other substances taking clenbuterol, so that should make you question a lot. Okay, in fact, they changed the rules of clenbuterol right after he got caught, because he was suspended for 6 months, but they changed the rules. So catch weights, rehydration clauses, getting fighters outside of their prime. There's a lot of things with Floyd Mayweather. There's a lot of things with Canelo Alvarez that are not good. Now, talking about Floyd Mayweather Jr., I was also against a lot of the things that he did, because in my opinion, he ducked a lot of fighters too, especially black fighters. I think there's no question about that. And that undefeated record doesn't mean shit if you're avoiding fighters, but that's not what he's trying to tell you, or PBC or a lot of promoters try to tell you. They try to make you think that undefeated means everything, and this is one of the biggest cancers on boxing, because the best will lose against, every fighter eventually. So, in the end of the day, whatever it is, that fight, needs to, Canelo Alvarez, he needs to start taking serious, his career, because he's only 32 years old, and only being 32 years old, looking like he looked against John Ryder is not a good look. And John Ryder was not an elite fighter, and we all know this. Okay, he's not Dave Morrell Jr. He's not Dave Benavidez. And people are saying that he's out of his prime, that he's not looking good. And he's only 32 years old. Canelo said he was going to retire at 35. Sorry, not 35, 37. He gave himself a day to retire. And at 32, it's not a good thing, what I'm seeing right now. Now, the first thing he needs to do, there's three fights that he needs to take in order to save, in my opinion, his career. The first one is going to be against Demetrius Andrade. He needs to take that fight, because that is being a spine on his record. And it's funny because he avoided the WBO when he was in 154. He never took that belt from Andrade. He was the mandatory. Andrade was the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez never took that fight. Tells you a lot. Then on top of that, the worst thing that Canelo did was something that stained the legacy of Mexico. He could have become an undisputed champion in 160, which is the division of Sugar Ray, Bernard Hopkins, and many other greats. He had a chance to become an undisputed champion, and the first one in Mexico, because Mexicans, they don't do well in certain weight classes, especially going up. He had a good chance to make history just by beating Demetrius Andrade, who had the WBO belt. And instead of taking that fight with an old enemy who was at 154, he did the stupid thing to go against Sergey Kovalev, put a rehydration clause, and fought a fighter who was pretty much on his way out. You know, I mean, that fight was just, you know, something else. But when he did that, the message that he sent real boxing fans, see, not the casual, see, there's also racial fans who want to see, you know, white people, you know, do well. I don't care about that. You know, they can't admit the truth. I do admit the truth. Canelo Alvarez, you know, did himself a very cowardly move by doing that. And he robbed Andrade for an opportunity to be undisputed too. So he did two things. He robbed himself and he robbed another fighter. That's what happens when fighters don't become undisputed or don't want to unify. They rob other people from becoming disputed. Now, he needs to take that thorn away. It's not a little spine, a thorn away, and fight Demetrius Andrade. Also, because Jermall Charlo Canelo is not going to be that great of a fight. And Charlo avoided Andrade, and so did Gennady Golovkin, and so did Canelo Alvarez. Now, we all know that Charlo, you know, was the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo spoke to Mauricio Papi and said, you know, give me the designation franchise belt so I can avoid Charlo. And that's also not, you know, that's not a good thing, because he just avoided Charlo, you know, in a bad way. So Charlo avoided Andrade, so did Triple G, so did Jaime Munguia, so did many other fighters, also in 154 as well. And at the end of the day, if he fights Andrade, he doesn't have to fight Charlo, because everybody in 160 avoided him, and you avoided him for an undisputed championship. So you need to take that thorn out of your legacy, because that's always going to be attached to your legacy. Just like Jack Dempsey had a thorn of Sam Langford and Harry Wills for avoiding them. That never came out. And historians, they realize these things, man. You're not going to get away from this. The casual fans, the racist or whatever, they will allow it. But not the real people who study boxing. The ones who are going to write the books. It's not going to be a good thing for you. So you need to take care of business. And Andrade is a thorn in your career. You need to take that thorn away as soon as possible. And he's at 168. And you can't say that Ryder was a better fight. You can't say Gildren was a better fight. You can't say Rocky Fielding was a better fight, or Caleb Plant was a better fight, or yada yada yada, or Callum Smith was a better fight, because Andrade, at the end of the day, if you look even at his track record, yeah, he didn't fight anybody because he avoided it at the same time, but he didn't fight like any super great fighters. He fought good fighters, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing extraordinary, I would say. However, he was champion in two-weight class, and he had 3 belts, and that's more than any of the fighters that Canelo fought in his 168 division, right? So that's important to note that. And you need to fight him. I don't think he beats Andrade. I think Andrade he'll outwork him, but he needs to take that fight. And you can't say that Andrade is running. You can't say this garbage, because that will be like Julio Cesar Chavez saying, well, I'm not going to fight Pernell Whitaker because he was running. I mean, who's stupid enough to believe that? You got to just be stupid. Or saying like, well, you know, even Devin Haney, you know, oh, he's running, but, you know, Lomachenko, even though he did ask for the franchise designation, at least he's fighting Devin Haney. So he's actually fighting him, okay? Or like Manny Pacquiao, who, said, maybe, I'm pretty sure, Floyd Mayweather Jr. avoided him for, 2010 and down, no question in my opinion. But at least he fought him in the end of his career. And Demetrius Andrade is older than Canelo Alvarez, so he needs to take that fight. There's no excuse for that, man. There's no excuse. Unless you're weak or you don't like boxing, or which is probably what happens most of the time, or you have something against black people. But let's just be honest, he needs to take that fight. Canelo needs to take that fight. Win or lose against Andrade, I don't care. The next fight you need to take David Benavidez. Now, David Benavidez is a fight that he surely needs to take, because David Benavidez is being the most avoided fighter at 168. Callum Smith didn't want him. Billy Joe Saunders didn't want him, who, by the way, also ducked Demetrius Andrade. He was going to have a second fight because he got caught with an illegal substance. And instead of fighting Andrade again, he decided to vacate the belt. So there you go, another fighter that avoided Andrade, and that will be good for Canelo. Anyway, Caleb Plant also never wanted with David Benavidez to unify against him, and Canelo Alvarez just waiting for him to David Benavidez to pretty much. I mean, he didn't even become interested in the WBC belt after David Benavidez left it vacant because he couldn't make the weight, right? But David Benavidez, man, he's been calling you out for a long time. And he's a very dangerous fighter. David Benavidez, what he did to Caleb Plant, he outworked him, out-destroyed him. Caleb Plant is a superior boxer. Caleb Plant had nothing to do. He actually did better against Canelo, even though Canelo knocked him out, that he did against David Benavidez, because David Benavidez just went right through him. He just went right through him. Every time David threw a shot, you could see Caleb was sparked. So David Benavidez has been calling you out. Jose Benavidez thinks you're a coward, which is not a good thing, and you need to take care of business with David, because fighting Bivol. Nobody asked you to fight Bivol. Bivol has to take care of business with Arthur Beterbiev. Bivol is a coward. He's never wanted Beterbiev since he saw what Alexander Gozbek did to. Since he saw what Beterbiev did to Alexander Gozbek, he's never wanted part of them. He saw, because Alexander Gozbek in his time, he was just as big as a name as Bivol or Arthur Beterbiev. But when he got eliminated and he basically retired after that fight with Beterbiev, which is insane, he had a lot of fear. Beterbiev put a lot of fear in Dimitri Bivol, but Dimitri Bivol trying to fight Canelo Alvarez, that's just a very cowardly move. That was just a very cowardly move, in my opinion. He needs to take care of his division, not fight Canelo. That was just stupid. But Canelo doesn't have to fight him. I'm not asking for that fight. I'm not asking for a rematch or going up against Arthur Beterbiev. But he does need to take care of business with David Benavidez. If he vacates his belt against David Benavidez, I mean, it's terrible. It's a really, really bad thing. It's gonna look real bad. It's gonna be real nasty from his side, because everybody right now is crucifying him in the chats and saying that he's a coward. Only he has a few, humpy dumpies who are, still, trying to hold on him, but they have no handles at this point to hold on tight on him or dick ride him. So that's going to be a problem. On top of that, David Benavidez has had 2 belts. The WBC, he obtained it 2 times, which already, qualifies him for a fight with Canelo. So there's no excuse for that. More than John Ryder. But he needs to take David Benavidez. And I don't think he's going to beat David Benavidez. I mean, I think David Benavidez is going to squash him. I think David Benavidez is going to rip him apart. I mean, that's what I believe. I just don't think he has the... I think he's too slow. I think David is just going to go right through him. But he had a better chance a few years ago when David was in his prime. I mean, Devin wasn't in his prime when he fought Ronald Gabriel. I think he had a chance, Canelo, to just take him out, but he let David Benavidez get better, and unfortunately, David is definitely gonna walk right through him. He's not beating Canelo Alvarez, not beating him. And once David beats him, whoever fans he has, whether it's actually Demetrius Andrade or David Benavidez, whoever fans he has, they're gonna quit on him because they were quitters. These fans to start with, they go by these winners and losing records. They're just little divas. They're not real boxing fans, so we know how they work. But yeah, he needs to take David. That's a must. And then the other fight is gonna be against Dave Morrell Jr. He needs to take on Dave Morrell Jr. Dave Morrell Jr. is mandatory for the WBA. Dave Morrell Jr. is probably the most dangerous fighter in that division. The way that he moves, the way that he fights is a dangerous fighter. He knows how to move. He has a good jab. He has power. What he did to Yamaguchi Falcao, he destroyed it in seconds. And at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard to beat Dave Morrell Jr. In fact, I think Dave Morrell Jr. beats both David Benavidez and also Demetrius Andrade in that division. They all signed a contract to fight each other at this point. So that's great news for boxing, but it's not good news for Canelo. But he needs to take Dave Morrell Jr. because the other fighter that gave him a fight was Erislandy Lara, and he never gave him a rematch. And now you have another Cuban, and if you avoid this Cuban, it's going to kind of show why they didn't want to give a rematch to Erislandy Lara, which, it was more than well deserved, right? He needed that rematch, but he didn't do it. He did it one with Golovkin, but he didn't give one to Lara, and I think that was bad. So a fighter needs to take rematches. This is part of his legacy. If it's a controversial fight, you need to go fight again. You need to go, and you can't avoid fighters, but you need to fight them again and show that, that you're better than that fighter. It is what it is. We all know what happened. Hasim Rahman, and Lennox Lewis, the two different outcomes in the fight. We know what happened. That's how boxing is. That's how boxing is. So Dave Morrell Jr. is going to be a fight that if Canelo Alvarez beats him, because I have Dave Morrell Jr. being a very dangerous fighter, and I think just like David Benavidez is going to make for himself a legacy. These will be fighters that will end up going to 175 and beating some of these fighters, like Arthur Beterbiev or other fighters when they get to that division. So he needs to take care of business right now. If he does that, I gave Canelo a lot of credit. Win or lose, doesn't matter. Just the fact that he takes the fight, that's what matters. If you're criticizing fighters because they lose, this is why fighters don't fight each other. Okay, it's not because the undefeated record is what makes a fighter. Is how many heads have you cut off? They cut you up. Somebody has your head, but how many heads do you have in your resume? Dangerous fighters that you had overall. That's what matters. It's not about winning or losing. Boxing should be like UFC. Lots of losses, but you got good wins too. That's how boxing is. So, Dave Morrell Jr. is a must fight for him. And if he vacates the belt against Dave Morrell Jr., that's going to be terrible. That's going to also show that he is a coward. So, now, these are the only 3 fights that he needs to take. He doesn't have to go with Arthur Beterbiev. He's not going to fight Dimitri Bivol again. He doesn't have to make Charlo go up. All that, forget it. Okay? He needs to take these 3 fights. That's what he needs to do. He needs to take these 3 fights. Win or lose, he'll finish his career at least like a Bernard Hopkins finished his career. He won't be Bernard Hopkins. No way. He's not going to be like Bernard Hopkins in legacy. That's not going to happen. Okay, he's not going to be like a Marvin Hagler or Tommy Hearns, or he's not going to be like that. Okay? He's not going to be like a Michael Nunn. He's not at that category. However, if he beats these 3 fighters, then we can talk about comparing him with certain of these fighters. But at the very least, he needs to fight them. Now, the problem is that Gennady Golovkin did him a disfavor because Gennady Golovkin's legacy is also garbage at this point. had Gennady Golovkin fight Andre Ward during his time, and he never wanted to fight Andre Ward. Even Abel Sanchez said that they were not willing to go to 160, so that was 168, which it was a sham, that whole thing, because Andre Ward said, okay, come and fight me. If you really want me, fight me, right? The same thing that Jamal Charlo was saying about David Benavidez, oh, I'm going to fight you, whatever, but never showed up, right? So same thing. But had Andre Ward fought Gennady Golovkin, there wouldn't be no Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez. But the problem is Gennady Golovkin knew that he fought Ward, he wouldn't make the money to fight Canelo Alvarez, make him move up in weight. So he took David Lemieux, and then at the same time, you know, he had Kell Brook move up 2 weight classes, but he couldn't actually move up 1 weight class to actually fight Andre Ward, and this is the God of War? Come on. Other than that, you know, he never fought Dmitry Pirog. That would have been a really good fight. It wasn't necessarily his fault. I know Dmitry Pirog had a problem with his disc. That was a fight that everybody wanted to see. But when he had a chance to be undisputed with Billy Joe Saunders, I know Billy Joe Saunders started avoided him in the for some time. But then when he had the belts, he had a chance to fight Billy Joe Saunders for undisputed. But instead he decided to fight Canelo Alvarez. That was a big mistake. He should have got the undisputed championship first, and then fight Canelo Alvarez and get even more money. That was a big mistake. After that, after he lost against Canelo, he tied and then he lost 2 times. I mean, let's forget about the third one. And that's funny how he actually moved up with Canelo Alvarez, but he couldn't move up in weight when Andre was there and he was more in his prime. I mean, just like I said. So he could have unified with Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade, and he had another chance to actually become undisputed. He completely wrecked the opportunity, completely avoided these 2 fighters, and he just abandoned the WBA strap and the IBF strap because he didn't want to fight his mandatory Randy Lara or also Falcao. I mean, Bernard Hopkins at 41 years old. Gennady Golovkin has 40 years old, right? Bernard Hopkins at 41 years old fighting Antonio Tarver. He was fighting Winky Wright, Kelly Pavlik, Chad Dawson, Gene Pascal. We won and lost. Taboris Crowd. I mean, there's no excuse for this. There's no excuse for this. The problem is that because he didn't take those fights, is going to lower the pedigree of Gennady Golovkin. And unfortunately, that's going to affect Canelo Alvarez because now Canelo Alvarez is fighting a fighter whose legacy is just not good enough. Because Gennady Golovkin is just an average middleweight. Is not even that great. Gennady Golovkin never fought in a rematch against Derevchenko, who deserved the rematch after the first fight. It's just, if he would have done the rematch, I give some credit, but he didn't do that. It was a tight fight with Daniel Jacobs. That would have been for a rematch too. Once he started fighting better opposition, he wasn't as dominant. You know, when he was fighting, you know, other fighters, you know, who weren't that, when he was fighting other fighters who weren't that good or that pedigree, he was doing great. But when these other fighters came, things changed for him. So that's not going to help Canelo Alvarez in his legacy. If you say he fought Gennady Golovkin, I just look at Gennady Golovkin's record and say, this is the people he avoided. What is this guy? I mean, who did he fight? You know, if you're talking about Daniel Jacobs, well, he just fought Peter. He really just beat Peter Quillin and Derevchenko, and Derevchenko is moving up 1 weight class. So, I mean, Derevchenko lost against everybody really in that division. He should have beat Gennady Golovkin as well. And unfortunately, Canelo can say, the fans can say, well, he fought Sugar Shane Mosley, but Sugar Shane Mosley was on his way out. So that's not going to help him. I mean, that was, he fought Austin Trout. I do give him credit for that one. I think Austin Trout was a good fight. But then he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., and the reason why they got him is because they thought they were going to beat Floyd because he was out of his prime, and that was a bad miscalculation. That didn't work out. He never gave a rematch to Islandy Lara. He fought Cotto, but Cotto was also on his way out too. In fact, I think he had one more fight after and he quit. After that, it was against Saddam Ali. I think Saddam Ali beat him, and that was it. It was the end of Cotto. And Cotto is I mean, he was okay. He wasn't. He was moving up from his weight class when he fought Floyd, and then the middleweight. I mean, he had an average. I mean, he was okay as a fighter, but I don't see anything extraordinary with Cotto, to be honest. He was never undisputed. I never saw him as this fighter, like a lot of people claim. He was not a Bernard Hopkins. Like, that's what I'm saying. He wasn't. He never become an undisputed champion like Jermaine Taylor. Like, he wasn't this sort of fighter, but he was okay. So he needs to fight these three guys, man. He needs to fight these three guys because these guys, fighting people on your way out is different than fighting people in their primes when they're coming in. People in their primes, they're not going to have a legacy right away. So you got to destroy them right away. But if you're taking your time and you're picking your battles, that's going to look bad on your record. So he needs to take those fights for his own good. And if not, it's going to look real bad. And to be honest with you, he's one of the worst middleweights that I've seen in boxing history, because now he's reminding me of a Jack Dempsey, of a Gene Toney, where they're just avoiding black fighters all the way. Harry Greb didn't do that. He fought everybody: Tiger, Flowers, Kid Norfolk, Mikey Walker. Mikey Walker wasn't black, but he fought everybody. He fought absolutely everybody in his division. He fought absolutely everybody. And I think he fought Harry Wills as well, who was also avoided too. So you want to be a Harry Greb in the sport. You don't want to end up like a Jack Dempsey or a Jane Toney, especially with boxers who are undefeated right now, who you avoided for really important things. So that's what he needs to do. If he doesn't do this, if he leaves his titles vacant, if he fights Edgar Berlanga, if he does that sort of move, it's going to look terrible. It's going to look real nasty. And then, you know, at the end of the day, history is fair. You avoid certain fighters, well, you deserve certain criticism and certain records as well. So that's my 2 coins with this. Give us a like, subscribe, become part of Golden Era, best boxing site in the web. Nobody does it like we do. And, you know, subscribe and, you know, visit goldeneraboxing.com for news and stories. Peace out, and to the next video.